My name is Eleanor. I am 82 years old, and I live alone in a house that echoes with 60 years of silence. There's a storm outside tonight. Rain against the windows, wind through the bare branches of the oak tree my father planted when I was 7. The same tree I used to climb while he watched from the porch, calling up to me to be careful, his voice warm with what I thought was love. On the table beside me sits a wooden box. Inside are letters, photographs, documents, pieces of a truth I've carried alone for 6 decades. My hands shake when I touch it. Not from age. From memory. This is the first time I've ever told this story. I was 25 when I learned what kind of man my father really was. Not the man who taught me to ride a bicycle, who walked me down the aisle at my wedding, who held his first grandchild with tears in his eyes. The other man. The one who lived in the shadows of our perfect family life. Tonight, with the storm raging and my own mortality whispering in the darkness, I'm ready to speak. Not for forgiveness. Not for understanding. But because truth should not die with me. Because I'm tired of being loyal to a lie. The rain is getting harder now. The house creaks around me like old bones. And I begin where all secrets begin. With the things we choose not to see. I remember his hands first. Large, gentle hands that tied my shoelaces and smoothed my hair before school. Hands that applauded at my piano recitals and wiped my tears when I scraped my knee. I trusted those hands completely. We lived in a white house on Maple Street, with blue shutters and a garden that Mother tended with religious devotion. Father worked at the insurance company downtown, came home every evening at 6:15 sharp. He'd kiss Mother on the cheek, ruffle my hair, and ask about my day while she served dinner on the good china. To the neighbors, we were the perfect family. Father coached Little League on Saturdays, Mother sang in the church choir, and I was the well-behaved daughter who always said, please and thank you. We fit together like pieces of a puzzle, each of us playing our part. But even then, there were cracks in the picture. Mother's silences that stretched too long. The way she'd flinch when Father raised his voice, even just to call me for dinner. The locked door to the basement that I was never allowed to open. Nothing down there but old boxes and spiders, Father would say, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. There were phone calls that made him leave the room. Letters that arrived with no return address, which he'd read and immediately burn in the fireplace. When I asked about them, Mother would busy herself with dishes or laundry, pretending not to hear. I was 12 when I first noticed the woman at the grocery store. She stood at the end of our aisle, staring at Father with an expression I couldn't name. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she gripped her cart. When Father saw her, his entire body went rigid. We need to go, he said, abandoning our half-full cart. Now. The woman followed us to the parking lot, calling his name. Not Mr. Patterson like everyone else, but James. Her voice was broken, desperate. Please, James. Just 5 minutes. Please. Father shoved me into the car and drove away without looking back. I watched through the rear window as the woman stood alone in the parking lot, her shoulders shaking. Who was that, Daddy? His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Nobody. Sweetheart. Just somebody confused. But I saw the look in his eyes. The same look Mother got when she thought no one was watching. Fear. Guilt. The weight of something unspeakable. At home, he disappeared into his study for hours. Mother made dinner in silence, her movements mechanical. When I asked if everything was okay, she smiled that brittle smile she'd perfected over the years. Of course, dear. Everything's fine. That night, I heard them arguing through the thin walls. Father's voice low and urgent, Mother's responses barely whispers. I caught fragments. Can't keep doing this. What if she finds out? Too dangerous. I pressed my ear to the wall, trying to understand. But children aren't meant to decode the language of adult secrets. We trust that the people who love us are telling us the truth. I trusted him completely. Even when the pieces didn't fit. Even when his hugs felt more like chains than comfort. Even when I caught him watching me with an expression I couldn't name, something hungry and calculating behind his kind eyes. I was 17 when I left for college. Father cried when he dropped me off at the dormitory. Real tears, not the crocodile tears of a man playing a part. I think he knew even then that distance might give me clarity. That one day I might start asking the right questions. But I was still his little girl. I still called him every Sunday, still came home for holidays, still believed in the man who had raised me with such careful, deliberate love. It would take 8 more years before I learned the truth about those careful, deliberate choices. Before I understood that love and control are not the same thing. Before I discovered what he'd been hiding in the spaces between his smiles. 8 more years before I learned about the other family. I was 25 and living in Chicago, working as a secretary at a law firm. I had a small apartment with a view of the lake, a life that felt clean and simple and my own. I called home every Sunday, visited for holidays, and thought I had successfully escaped the suffocating perfection of Maple Street. Then Mother had her stroke. Father called me at work, his voice hollow. "She's stable," he said, "but she's asking for you. Can you come home?" I drove through the night, my hands gripping the steering wheel the same way his had that day in the grocery store parking lot. When I arrived at the hospital, Mother looked so small in the white bed, her face slack on one side, her words slurred but urgent. "Eleanor," she whispered, grasping my hand with surprising strength. "There's something you need to know." Father appeared in the doorway, his face carefully composed. "She's been saying strange things. The medication, makes them confused." But Mother's eyes were clear, desperate. "The box," she managed. "In the basement. Behind the furnace. You need to, before he—" "That's enough, dear," Father said, moving to her bedside. "You need to rest." She squeezed my hand harder. "Promise me." I promised, though I didn't understand what I was promising. Mother died 3 days later. At the funeral, I noticed things I'd never seen before. The way certain people avoided Father's eyes. The woman from the grocery store, older now, standing at the back of the church. She left before the service ended, but not before our eyes met across the crowded pews. After the burial, while Father dealt with the lawyer and the endless paperwork of death, I went to the basement. The box was exactly where Mother said it would be. Heavy, wooden, locked. I used a screwdriver to pry it open, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the tool. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. A woman with dark hair and kind eyes. Children, 2 boys and a girl, growing up in snapshots. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, school plays. A whole life documented in careful detail. At the bottom of the box, a stack of letters tied with a blue ribbon. The return address was from a town 3 hours away. The name on the envelope made my blood freeze. James Patterson. My father's name. My father's handwriting. I opened the first letter with trembling fingers. It was dated 28 years ago, shortly after my parents' wedding. "My dearest Margaret, I know this situation is difficult, but you must understand. I can't leave Eleanor's mother now. Not when she's so fragile. But I haven't forgotten my promises to you, or to our children. The money I'm sending should help with David's school clothes. Kiss him and Sarah and little Michael for me. Tell them Daddy will visit soon. All my love, James." I read letter after letter, my world crumbling with each word. Father writing about school plays he'd attended, scraped knees he'd kissed, bedtime stories he'd read. To other children. His other children. While I was learning to ride a bicycle, he was teaching another little girl to tie her shoes. While I was having nightmares and climbing into his bed for comfort, he was tucking other children into their beds, singing them lullabies. There were bank records. Monthly payments sent to Margaret Collins for over 30 years. Money for rent, for food, for school supplies. Money carefully hidden from our household budget. Money that should have been ours. At the bottom of the box, I found the marriage certificate. James Patterson and Margaret Collins, married 6 months before Father married Mother. Making his marriage to Mother, my parents' entire life together, a lie. Making me illegitimate. Making us the other family. The basement door creaked. Father's footsteps on the stairs. I shoved the letters back into the box, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. "Eleanor." His voice was cautious. "What are you doing down here?" I turned to face him, the box clutched in my arms. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Him, standing in the doorway like a stranger. Me, holding the truth he'd spent my entire life hiding. "Who is Margaret Collins?" I asked. The mask slipped from his face. The kind, gentle father I'd known for 25 years disappeared, replaced by someone cold and calculating. Someone who'd been caught. Put the box down, Eleanor. Who are David and Sarah and Michael? I said put it down. But I couldn't. My hands wouldn't obey. You have another family. It wasn't a question. It was the sound of my world ending. Father's shoulders sagged. For a moment, he looked like an old man. It's complicated. Complicated. The word came out as a laugh, sharp and bitter. You've been living a double life for 30 years, and you call it complicated? You don't understand, Dash. Then help me understand. I clutched the box tighter. Help me understand how you could lie to me every single day of my life. How you could have other children and never tell me I had brothers and a sister. How you could, Dash. Because I love you, he said quietly. Because I love all of you. The words hung in the air between us like a confession and a curse. You can't love someone and lie to them like this, I whispered. Can't I? He stepped closer, and for the first time in my life, I was afraid of him. I've given you everything, Eleanor. A home, an education, a name. I've been a good father to you. While you were being a good father to them too. Yes. The word was simple, devastating. Yes. I looked at this man who had raised me, who had been my hero and my measuring stick for all other men. I looked at him and saw a stranger. A liar. A man who had built his life on deception so complete, so carefully maintained, that even I, his own daughter, had never suspected. Does she know? I asked. Your wife. Margaret. Does she know about us? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. She knows, he said finally. She's always known. I carried the box upstairs and set it on the kitchen table where we'd eaten Sunday dinners for 25 years. Father followed me, his footsteps heavy on the stairs he'd climbed thousands of times, coming home to his second family. I need to know everything, I said. He sat down across from me, suddenly looking every one of his 62 years. What do you want to know? Start with the truth. For once in your life, tell me the truth. So he did. Margaret Collins was his first wife. His real wife. They'd married young, had 3 children in quick succession. He'd loved her, he said. Still loved her. But she'd wanted him to be something he wasn't: stable, dependable, the kind of man who came home to the same house every night. I tried, he said, his voice hollow. But I felt trapped. Suffocated. So I started traveling for work, staying away longer and longer. That's when I met your mother. Mother had been different. Fragile. Needy. She'd made him feel strong, important. When she'd gotten pregnant, he'd panicked. He couldn't abandon his first family. But he couldn't abandon her either. So you married her, I said. While you were already married. I thought I could manage it. I thought I could make it work. By lying to everyone. By loving everyone. His voice cracked. I know how it sounds, Eleanor. I know what you must think of me. But I never meant for anyone to get hurt. How could no one get hurt? How could you think that was possible? He had no answer for that. Maybe because there was no answer. Maybe because he'd spent 30 years not thinking about the hurt, focusing only on the elaborate choreography of his double life. I learned about the careful scheduling. How he'd tell Margaret he was traveling for work when he came to us. How he'd tell us he was working late when he went to them. How he'd maintained separate bank accounts, separate phone numbers, separate lives. The woman in the grocery store, I said. That was her. Yes. She'd followed me. She was going through a difficult time. She wanted me to choose. And you chose us. I chose you both. I always chose you both. That's not choosing, Father. That's cowardice. His face hardened. I gave you everything, Eleanor. I sacrificed everything for you children. All of you. You sacrificed nothing. You just took twice as much. We sat in silence, the weight of 30 years of deception settling between us. Finally, I asked the question that had been burning in my chest since I'd opened the box. Do they know about me? Yes. Do they know about Mother? Yes. And they just accepted it? Margaret did. She had to. She loved me. And the children? They're adults now. They understand that families are complicated. Complicated. There was that word again. The word he used to excuse the inexcusable. I thought about those other children. David, Sarah, Michael. My half-siblings. Growing up knowing their father had another family, another life. Did they wonder about me? Did they resent me? Did they hate me for existing? I want to meet them, I said. Eleanor. No. That's not a good idea. Why not? They're my family too, aren't they? My brothers and sister. It would be too confusing. Too painful. For whom? For them? Or for you? He stood up, pacing to the window where he'd watched me play as a child. Some things are better left alone, Eleanor. Some secrets are kept for good reasons. No, I said, standing too. Secrets are kept for selfish reasons. You kept this secret to protect yourself. Not us. Not them. You. I kept it to protect everyone. You kept it because you're a coward. The words hung between us like a slap. Father's face went white, then red. You don't understand, he said. You don't understand what it's like to love people who need different things from you. To be torn between two lives, two families. You weren't torn, I said. You chose. You chose to lie to everyone. You chose to let us live half-lives while you lived a double one. I gave you everything, Dash. You gave me nothing. The words exploded out of me. You gave me a childhood built on lies. You gave me a father who was never really there because half of him was always somewhere else. You gave me a mother who spent her whole life knowing she was second choice, knowing she was living a lie. Your mother loved me, Dash. My mother was trapped by you. You made her complicit in your deception. You made her lie to me every single day of my life. She chose to. She chose to because you gave her no choice. Because you made her believe that if she didn't play along, she'd lose you. And she was right, wasn't she? If she demanded the truth, if she demanded that you choose, you would have left. His silence was answer enough. I picked up the box and headed for the door. Where are you going? To find Margaret Collins. To meet my family. Eleanor, please. Don't do this. I turned back to look at him one last time. This man who had raised me, who I'd thought I knew better than anyone in the world. I'm going to do what you never did, I said. I'm going to tell the truth. The drive to Margaret's house took 3 hours. 3 hours to think about what I'd say, how I'd introduce myself, what I'd do if she slammed the door in my face. But when I knocked, she opened the door as if she'd been expecting me. Eleanor, she said softly. You look just like him. She invited me in. Made tea. Sat across from me at her kitchen table while I told her about the box, about Mother's death, about the truth I'd finally learned. I'm sorry, she said when I finished. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. Did you know? About me. I knew about you before you were born. He told me your mother was pregnant, that he felt responsible for her. And you let him go? I let him choose. I thought he'd come back to us. I thought it would be temporary. But he didn't come back. No. He didn't. We talked for hours. About Father, about the impossible situation he'd created, about the children we'd been and the adults we'd become. She showed me pictures of David, Sarah, and Michael. My brothers and sister. They'd like to meet you, she said. If you want. I want. But it would be 2 more years before I actually met them. 2 years of cautious letters, tentative phone calls, careful planning. When we finally came together, it was awkward and painful and beautiful all at once. David looked like Father. Sarah had my mother's eyes. Michael had my laugh. We were strangers who shared blood, history, a man who had divided his love between us like slices of pie, never giving anyone the whole. They didn't blame me. I didn't blame them. We blamed him. But Father never understood that. When I told him about meeting them, about the relationships we were building, he was furious. You're destroying everything, he said. You're destroying our family. There is no our family, I said. There never was. There was just you, living 2 lives, and the rest of us trying to figure out which pieces of you we were allowed to have. I did the best I could. No. You did what was easiest for you. After that we barely spoke. He'd call on holidays, send birthday cards, try to maintain some semblance of the relationship we'd had. But it was over. The man I'd loved was gone, replaced by someone I couldn't forgive. He died when I was 43. I went to his funeral, stood in the back of the church next to Margaret and my half-siblings. Two families, mourning the same complicated man. At the graveside, people approached me with condolences. "He was such a good father," they said. "He loved you so much." I nodded and smiled and said nothing. What could I say? That love without truth is not love at all? That the man they were mourning was a stranger to me? I kept his secret for 18 more years. I kept it because I was tired of explaining, tired of seeing the pity in people's eyes when they learned about my complicated family. I kept it because it was easier to live with a lie than to keep defending the truth. But I never stopped carrying it. Like a stone in my chest, it weighed me down, made me suspicious of love, made me question every kindness. I married, but I never fully trusted my husband. I had children, but I watched them constantly for signs of deception. I built my life on hypervigilance, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because if the man who raised me could lie so completely, so convincingly, for so long, what did that say about love? About family? About the very foundation of human connection? The years that followed were like living underwater. Everything muffled, distorted, seen through the lens of what I now knew about deception and the human capacity for sustained lies. I married Robert when I was 31. He was a good man, steady, honest, predictable. Everything father had pretended to be. But even with Robert, I found myself watching for signs. Did he really work late, or was he somewhere else? When he said he loved me, did he mean it, or was he just saying what I wanted to hear? "You're different," Robert said one evening, about 6 months into our marriage. We were washing dishes after dinner, the kind of domestic scene I'd witnessed countless times in my childhood home. But I couldn't stop wondering if father had done dishes with Margaret too, if he'd had the same conversations with her that he'd had with mother. Different how? Distant. Like you're always somewhere else. I wasn't somewhere else. I was somewhere else when. Always calculating, always suspicious, always waiting for the moment when the facade would crack and reveal the truth underneath. I wanted to tell Robert about father, about the other family, about the way lies could be woven so seamlessly into daily life that they became indistinguishable from truth. But how do you explain that your entire childhood was performance art? That the man who taught you to trust had been the most untrustworthy person you'd ever known? Instead, I said, "I'm fine. Just tired." Tired. I was tired for decades. When our daughter Emma was born, I held her and felt the terrifying weight of responsibility. This tiny person would trust me completely, the way I trusted father. How could I ensure I was worthy of that trust? How could I make sure I never caused her the kind of pain he'd caused me? I became hypervigilant about honesty. I told Emma the truth about everything. Why flowers died, why people got sick, why marriages sometimes ended. I thought I was protecting her from the kind of deception I'd lived with. Instead, I was probably terrifying her with too much truth, too young. "Mommy, where do babies come from?" I gave her a detailed, age-appropriate explanation of human reproduction. She was 4 years old. "Mommy, why is Grandpa not coming to Christmas?" I told her that sometimes adults make choices that hurt other people, and that Grandpa had made some choices that hurt me. "Mommy, are you and Daddy going to get divorced?" I told her that I hoped not, but that sometimes people stopped being able to live together, and that if that happened, it wouldn't be her fault. She was 6 years old. Robert worried about my parenting style. "She's just a child, Eleanor. She doesn't need to know everything. She needs to know that I'll tell her the truth. She needs to know she can trust me. She can trust you without knowing every difficult thing about the world." But I couldn't see the difference. In my mind, any withholding of truth was a step toward the kind of systematic deception father had practiced. I couldn't understand that there was a difference between protecting someone from age-inappropriate information and lying to them about fundamental aspects of reality. I went to therapy when Emma was 8. The therapist, Dr. Patterson, yes, the same name as father, a cosmic joke I couldn't escape, helped me understand that I was parenting from a place of trauma. "You're trying to control something that can't be controlled," she said. "You can't prevent all deception by being hypervigilant about it. You can't protect your daughter from every possible betrayal." "I can try." "You can try, but at what cost? You're teaching her that love is conditional on perfect honesty. That relationships are investigations rather than connections." She was right, but I couldn't stop. The fear was too deep, too fundamental. I'd learned that the people who love you most are capable of the most elaborate deceptions. How do you unlearn that? I started checking Robert's phone. His email. His credit card statements. I told myself I was being careful, not paranoid. I told myself that this was what responsible adults did. They verified. When Emma was 10, she asked me why I was always going through Daddy's things. I'm not going through his things. You are. I saw you looking at his computer last night. I was caught. By a 10-year-old. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was just checking something. What? Nothing important. Are you lying to me? The question hit me like a physical blow. My daughter, asking if I was lying to her. After all my careful truth-telling, all my vigilance about honesty, she still had to ask. No, sweetheart. I'm not lying. I was checking something on Daddy's computer because I was worried about something. But I wasn't hiding it from you. What were you worried about? I sat down on her bed, looking at this child who had my eyes and Robert's steady temperament. How could I explain that I was worried about everything, all the time? That I lived in constant fear of betrayal because I'd learned that betrayal could come from the people you trusted most? I was worried that Daddy might be keeping secrets from us. What kind of secrets? I don't know. That's why I was checking. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, are you keeping secrets from me? I try not to. Try not to. I try to always tell you the truth. But sometimes there are things that are hard to explain, or things that might hurt you to know. Like what? And there it was. The moment when I had to choose between my compulsive honesty and my child's well-being. The moment when I realized that truth without wisdom is just another form of cruelty. Like the fact that I don't trust very easily because of things that happened to me when I was younger. Things that have nothing to do with you or Daddy, but that sometimes make me act scared when I don't need to be. What things? My father lied to me about important things. And it hurt me very much. And now I worry that other people might lie to me too. Is that why you checked Daddy's computer? Yes. Do you think he's lying to you? No. I think he's a good man who loves us. But sometimes I check anyway, because I'm scared. That's sad, Mommy. Yes, it is sad. That conversation changed something between us. Not everything. I still struggled with trust, still found myself checking and verifying and watching for signs. But I started to understand that my trauma didn't give me the right to traumatize others. I told Robert about Father that night. All of it. The double life, the other family, the box in the basement, the way it had shaped my understanding of love and trust and family. He listened without interrupting, holding my hand while I cried for the first time in years. I'm so sorry, he said when I finished. I'm so sorry you went through that. I should have told you before. Now I'm 82. The house on Maple Street is gone. Sold decades ago. Robert died 3 years ago. Cancer. Quick and merciful. Emma lives in California with her own family. Calls me every Sunday like I used to call Father. I never told Emma about her grandfather's other family. I told myself I was protecting her. But maybe I was just protecting myself. Maybe I was tired of being the keeper of uncomfortable truths. David died last year. Heart attack. Sudden. At his funeral, I met his children, my nieces and nephews, who had never known I existed. They looked at me with polite confusion when Sarah introduced me as their aunt. Dad never mentioned you, his daughter said. It's complicated, I replied using Father's word. But it's not complicated. It's simple. He lied to all of us. He built his life on deception so elaborate that it became its own kind of truth. And we all spent our lives trying to understand what that meant about love, about family, about the very nature of human connection. I'm telling this story now because I'm tired. Tired of carrying his secrets. Tired of protecting his memory. Tired of pretending that love justifies deception, that family loyalty requires silence about family dysfunction. I'm telling this story because I want someone to know that it's possible to love someone completely and still be destroyed by them. That it's possible to be a good parent and still cause irreparable harm. That it's possible to build a family on lies and still have that family function, even flourish, until the moment the lies are discovered. I'm telling this story because I want someone to understand that secrets don't protect people. They protect the secret keeper. They allow the person with power to maintain that power by controlling information, by deciding what others are allowed to know about their own lives. I'm telling this story because I realized, sitting in this house with the storm raging outside, that I'm the only one left who knows the whole truth. Margaret is dead. Father is dead. Mother is dead. David is dead. Soon, I'll be dead too. And if I don't tell this story, if I take these secrets to my grave, then Father wins. His version of reality, the version where love justifies any deception, where family loyalty requires silence about family dysfunction, becomes the only version that survives. I won't let that happen. I've called Sarah and Michael. I've told them I'm writing this down, that I'm going to share it. They understand. They have their own stories to tell, their own truths to preserve. Emma calls while I'm writing this. She asks what I'm working on. A story, I tell her. About your grandfather. What kind of story? A true one. Will you share it with me? When I'm finished. Is it difficult? Yes. But I think it's important. Then I'll read it. Whatever it is. After I hang up, I sit in the dark for a long time. The storm has passed, but the house is still full of echoes. Memories of a childhood that was real and false at the same time. Love that was genuine and performed simultaneously. I think about Father, about the choices he made and the prices we all paid for them. I think about the other family, about the way we were all shaped by his deception, all made suspicious and hypervigilant and careful about trust. I think about the woman in the grocery store, the way she looked at him with such desperate hope. I think about Mother, dying with secrets on her lips. I think about myself, spending decades unable to trust the people who loved me because I'd learned that love and lies could coexist so seamlessly. And I think about Emma, about the way she looks at her own husband, the way she loves without suspicion, the way she somehow escaped the legacy of distrust that Father left behind. Maybe that's healing. Maybe that's what it means to break a cycle. Not to forget the past, but to refuse to let it determine the future. I finish writing as the sun comes up. The box of letters sits beside me, still holding its secrets, but the secrets aren't mine anymore. They're part of a story now, part of a record that will outlive me. I call Sarah and Michael. I tell them the story is finished. What will you do with it? Sarah asks. I'll share it. Not for revenge. Not for attention. But because truth has value, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. And if people judge him? If they think less of him? Then they'll know who he really was. And maybe that's more important than protecting who we wished he was. I love you, Eleanor, she says. I'm glad you found us. I'm glad we found each other.